All right, part 3 of this 3-part series on the mental framework, how we create the mental framework. Last episode or title was Collateral Damage, how I talked about what we think, how we feel. The framework is built again as a child by the adults responsible for our growth. In summary of this flipping your anxious thoughts and mental framework, things I want to point out. We follow what's familiar, even when it's hurt. That's why people stay in unhealthy relationships. That's why people stay on jobs they're not happy at, because it's familiar. The only thing you have to do is make the unfamiliar familiar. If you're not used to riding a bike, ride a bike more. If you're not used to cooking without salt, cook without salt more. If you're not used to not raising your voice, do some practices where you don't raise your voice. Eventually, the unfamiliar will be familiar. The next thing, be intentional. Be intentional. Be intentional
Okay.
about what you see, hear, and feel. If you're always watching the news, your chest is going to be tight and you're going to be worried. If you're always watching violent programs, crime, horror, your mental and emotional regulation is going to be slightly skewed. If I'm always hearing cussing and yelling as a way of communication, as a child, that's how I'm going to think you're supposed to communicate. From utero to death, we have to challenge what we hear, see, and ultimately feel. It's the only way we're going to be able to flip the mind of those anxious, negative, self-defeating thoughts. Okay? Along with that, we have to be able to, like I said in the other video, walk past the naysayers, block out the criticism, because those people are hurting. Those people don't have the strength. Those people are afraid, and they see you doing, saying, feeling what they wish they could. So they're going to be negative. It won't work. Nobody's into that. Everybody's doing that. Blah, blah, blah. Block it out. Blocking criticism can literally change your life. Like, it's that intense. Blocking criticism can change your life. The critic is nothing more than a hurt individual who really has nothing but negative to present to someone, unless they're going through something themselves. Because if I can break you enough, I don't have to focus on my brokenness. That is a flaw in human nature. But let me tell you this. Say, thanks for sharing, and go on. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Because if you go into it, they're not going to admit how they feel. They're not going to admit what they're going through. They're not going to admit their fears and weaknesses. The hyper focus is you. So block it out. Block it out. Block it out. Whether it's family, whether it's your mate, and if that is the case, do you need to remain where you are? Okay? Think about that. The closing thought I want to give is God's thoughts are just like manifestation. It's just like creating the mental framework. Everything we do that becomes successful or unsuccessful, every habit, every bad habit, is done with repetition. It became familiar because it was done with repetition. Islams, they have something they do repetitiously. They pray certain times a day, every day, repetition. Catholics, the Hail Mary, the rosary, when they do the Hail Mary over and over and over and over again, repetition. Christians, Our Father, repetition. Flipping anxious thoughts requires repetition. Repetition in breathing, repetitions in refocus, repetitions in being intentional about your peace. To get out of the stinking thinking and the anxious mind, we have to be intentional about our peace. And when you can block out that social media, block out the news, block out those things that are created to make us uneasy, we will live healthier lives. I specifically scroll for good stories, for funny stories, for comedy, for babies, or for animals. If you see me watching the news, that is one indication that I'm in a great place in my life. Because if I'm anywhere I'm not taking in that negativity. I hope, once again, that you have gotten something out of all three or one video in this 3-part series, and that you are able to challenge yourself and the ones around you to step out on faith and really try these exercises to reframe your framework from the anxiety, the negativity, and the self-defeating prophecies that we give ourselves and our children. Each one teach one. Share love, be love. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Again, my apologies for the delay. Life happens. Namaste.
I hate you, my mind. Please get out of my head. Curiosity been getting to me. I'm wondering if you've been thinking of me. August, September, October. Saw your new baby, I thought about catching a honey. Thought about catching a ball.